this is Mrs. Taylor, and I want to go over number 8, 9, and 10 from your study guide. These are some questions that require higher level thinking, and I feel like in addition to a solution, you could use an explanation. So number 8 says, given the line containing the points negative 320 and 10, 7, and the equations y equals negative 2x plus 17, and 4x minus y equals negative 17, how are the graphs of the three related? And the answer choices kind of give you a hint at what they really want you to look at. Each answer choice mentions slope and the y-intercept. So we need to know what those are for each of those different linear relationships. So first it starts off with a line containing these points. And so it would be easiest to create the equation for that line in order to determine the slope and the y-intercept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the process that we completed for our tables last week. I have the 2 points. I use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The other way to think about it is you just subtract the y's over subtracting the x's. And then once I subtract and divide, I get a slope of negative 1. Now the next thing I did here was I put it in point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I chose the point negative 320. So negative 3 was my x value, 20 was my y value. And that is the equation of the line, but I'm going to put it in slope-intercept form so I can find my intercept, because that's what they're talking about over here as well. So remember from the table we learned that if we distribute the negative 1 and then add this 20, I get slope-intercept form. So my slope is negative 1, which I knew, and my y-intercept is 17. Now this equation was already in slope-intercept form. Slope is negative 2, intercept is 17. So already I'm seeing that the slopes are not the same. If you look, different slopes. So I'm choosing between this first option or the last option. And I also notice that the intercepts here are the same. So I'm thinking it's the first one, but I need to confirm with this equation. So I'm going to take this equation, which is in standard form, and put it in slope-intercept form like this equation and this one, so I can compare. So that process we learned with our table last week. I want to get the y by itself to put it in slope-intercept form. So I move this 4x back to this side of the equal sign by subtracting it. That would be negative 4x minus 17. I still have a negative with my y. It's negative 1 times y. So I divide by negative 1 to get the y by itself. And then as a result, I get a slope of 4x. Negative 17 divided by negative 1 is positive 17. So here it is again, the y-intercept is 17. The y-intercept is 17 for all three. This equation, the equation that represented the line for these points, and the equation that they gave me that was in standard form. So that's why option 1 is the answer. Now for number 9, instead of giving you pairs of points and graphs, instead they gave you a graph and then some intercepts. So it says Max and his friend Pat are studying for a math test. They want to compare two functions. The first, f of x, is linear with an x-intercept of negative 4 and a y-intercept of 8. The second, g of x, is shown in the graph. So this is g of x. F of x is the one with the intercepts given. Which function has the larger slope, and what is that slope? So I need to find the slope. Well, when they give me a graph, and they gave me points, I can count rise over run. So I start at one point, and I figure out if I go up or down to get to the other point. So from this point, I would go up, and then I need to go to the left. Well, up is positive on a graph, and to the left is negative. So I went up 3 units, to the left, negative 3 units. Rise over run would be 3 over negative 3, which simplifies to negative 1. The other option would be find the coordinates of these points and then use the slope formula to find the slope. Either way, the slope is negative 1. Now, in the table from last week, we learned that if they give me the x-intercept, I can turn that into a coordinate pair. If they give me the y-intercept, I can turn that into a coordinate pair. X-intercept is where y is 0. Y-intercept is where x is 0. And once I have those 2 points, I can use the slope formula. So, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, subtract the y's, subtract the x's. And once I do that and reduce it down, I get a slope of 2. So the slope for f of x is 2. The slope for g of x is negative 1. Which function has the larger slope? Well, f of x, because 2 is greater than negative 1. And that slope is 2. So that's how you do number 9. Now number 10 is different because they give you a table. They give you an equation as well. So you have function m is represented by the equation g of x equals 2/3 x minus 8. The table shows values for function n. So here's the table. The value when the y-intercept of h of x is subtracted from the y-intercept of g of x is blank. So if they're asking for the y-intercept, I need to find those first. And g of x was given in slope-intercept form, so that one's simple. The y-intercept is negative 8. And you see I noted that here. In a table, the y-intercept is where x is 0. In the original table, they didn't give me that value. So what I did, and what you should do, is first find the rate of change. So I looked over here and I saw my x's are changing by 2. My y's are changing by 4. So if I want to fill in some missing measures here, I can maintain that pattern. I can say, okay, 3, if I go back by a change of 2, that would be 1. 3 minus 2 is 1. And if I go back with my y values by a change of 4, going backwards, that would be a 5. But 0 is only 1 unit away. So I need to think about, okay, I went half the distance up here. So half the distance down here would be only 2 units. So 5 minus 2 is 3. So that's how I found the y-intercept using the table by filling in the values. When x is 0, y is 3. So 3 is my y-intercept. The other way to have done this is to plot these points on a graph and then find the y-intercept that way. Either way, I need to subtract. So the y-intercept of h of x, which was 3, is subtracted from. So 3 is subtracted from negative 8. So that would look like this. Negative 8 minus 3 is negative 11. So that's just a explanation of those 3 solutions for your study guide for number 8, 9, and 10.